Hey, your next story and the last story you will read for ELA this year is a very short story by Ray Bradbury, who is a novelist and a short story writer. And the story you're going to read is called There Will Come Soft Rains. And I want to talk to you about it a little before you read it because you're going to start reading it and be like, this is really weird. Because the story is set in the future. The future of the story is 2026, which actually isn't that far in the future. So you're going to see some technology in there that we actually have today, which is pretty cool. So, Ray Bradbury is our author. He is a famous author. Here's a quote from him. You don't have to burn books to destroy a culture, just get people to stop reading them. One of Bradbury's most famous books is called Fahrenheit 451. Fahrenheit 451 is the temperature at which paper burns. And so he writes about a dystopian world in which the government no longer allows people to read books. Obviously, because the government wants to keep them uneducated and unaware of what's going on. So that's one of his most famous books that he's written. Again, you're not going to read that book, you're going to read a short story by Bradbury. So, who was Ray Bradbury? Ray Bradbury was an American fantasy and horror author who rejected being categorized as a science fiction author. He didn't want to be a sci fi guy, claiming that his work was based on the fantastical and the unreal. His best known novel is Fahrenheit 451, a dystopian study of future American society in which critical thought is outlawed. You guys, dystopian literature is actually really popular right now, like Hunger Games and Divergent, right? A lot of things, especially like the news and reading, is outlawed or somewhat outlawed in those cultures because the government doesn't want them to be aware of what's going on, especially like in Hunger Games, like in the other districts. So here I am right here. Ray Bradbury is also remembered for other popular works, including the Marshall Chronicles and Something Wicked This Way Comes. He won the Pulitzer in 2004 and he died relatively recently in 2012 at an old age of 91. There's another quote by him. Anything you dream is fiction, and anything you accomplish is science. The whole history of mankind is nothing but science fiction. So here's a great documentary. It's about 7 minutes long. I'm not going to play it in this video because then this video will take absolutely hours to upload. So I'm going to end up putting this documentary link in Google Classroom near this PowerPoint. There Will Come Soft Rain. So this is the short story you're going to read. He wrote this in May of 1950. And that date is really, really important. The nuclear bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki took place in August of 1945, just 5 years earlier. And that really, really upset people. And you're going to see in here that Ray Bradbury is opposed to inventions that destroy humanity, such as nuclear warfare. So, in this little story that you're going to read, there's allusions to this event in both the overall themes of the story as well as in the details of the story. For example, a silhouette of each family member was burned into the side of the house. That actually occurred in Japan after individuals were vaporized by the atomic bombs. So it's only 5 years after those atomic bombs were dropped, you guys. And so the American public of 1950 that's reading this is still reeling from that and still upset about that. So he draws upon this common knowledge in his story. So you have to realize that he's writing it in response to those bombs being dropped. At this time in history, we were also in the Cold War with Russia. And nuclear bombs were also a threat to the US. So this story, when people read it, really freaked people out. And you're probably going to be a little freaked out too when you read it. So, another thing that's in this story that I want to give you a little bit of background on is in the story is also a poem. And a poem is read to a person in the story. So, and the author of that poem is Sarah Teasdale. And the title of the poem is actually There Will Come Soft Rain. So Ray Bradbury actually took that title from Sarah Teasdale's poem, much like in the fall when we studied Of Mice and Men, and how John Steinbeck took that title of Mice and Men from Robert Burns's poem. Here's a quote from Sarah Teasdale: "I make the most of all that comes and the least of all that goes." So, why did he put this poem in this story? So, that poem was written in 1920, 30 years before Bradbury used it in the story. Sarah Teasdale lived through World War One. And after World War One, she hints at human extinction. There's a quote in the poem called "Mankind perished utterly." Perish means to die. And so after living through World War One, she had a pretty bleak understanding of what was happening to the world. She died in 1933 after a difficult fight with pneumonia. So Bradbury uses her poem in his story to warn people that mankind will become extinct itself if it continues to use nuclear weapons. It's a fictional story, but he writes the story to make an argument to scientists and to the American people. Like, technology is not always something that saves us. Many times it's something that hurts us. All right, so there you go. I hope that you enjoy this story. I will put a link to listen to it and read it on your screen as well.